Good morning, muy buenos días. Es un placer estar aquí en Asturias, que para mí es uno de los rincones más bonitos, no solo de la península, sino de toda Europa. Así que gracias por acogernos. Good morning. We want to know your secret. That's how the government of one of Spain's wealthiest regions approached the Iberian Eco-Village network 2 years ago. And what secret was that? The government of Navarra had studied the data, and they'd noticed something curious was happening. They realized that, bucking the trend of rural exodus, there were some rural hotspots where something different was happening, where babies were being born, where small local enterprises were thriving, where local food systems, organic food, were taking off. These hubs that so stood out to the regional officials were hotspots where eco-villages and other community-led initiatives were thriving. There are many in Navarra. You can see one of them here, and another is my community, Artera Bisimodo, near Pamplona. What were we doing right, they asked, and how can we help you? So, informed by decades of rural social innovation and inspired by projects like eco-villages and transition towns, we joined forces with the Navarran rural government, the Iberian Eco-Village Network, and local eco-villages to launch, which is right now creating a pilot project that's bringing together local groups that are learning from the eco-village model in the hopes of rehabilitating and repopulating previously abandoned villages with a sustainable, holistic eco-village model. In our community, we've been voted onto the local council. We've created green waste management schemes. We're doing trainings with local people. We run community cleanup days. There are many, many activities and local businesses happening. It's a model of community and institutional partnership that the Iberian Network is hoping can be replicated across Southern Europe and across Spain, Southern Europe, and indeed all of Europe and beyond to support depopulated rural areas and bring life back to the countryside in a community, place-based, holistic manner. It's initiatives like this that ECOLIS, the European network for community-based initiatives on climate change and sustainability, is supporting, because we, like the Navarran government found, we see how community-led initiatives are bolstering local resilience to a changing climate and to a changing world. The Iberian Eco-Village Network is a member of ECOLIS, and it's been working for decades on supporting local rural areas with the eco-village model. So it was hugely exciting when the Navarran government came to our eco-village and to the Iberian Network. But when they asked our secret, we knew that really there is no secret. We were just doing what people in rural areas have been doing for decades, if not centuries. We were doing what humans have always done, being the proverbial village that raises the child, being the network of mutual support and cooperation that has been lost sometimes in an economic system that that disconnects us from each other and from nature. But I want to say that this shift towards a more community and local-based approach isn't just happening in very specific, isolated spots. It's not just happening in eco-villages. It's happening in rural towns and villages, conventional villages as well, like here, like Ungersheim in northeast France. Through a combination of visionary leadership and empowered local participation, Ungersheim has become an emblematic example of the transition towns movement, showing what's possible when you plan with community and climate in mind. Ungersheim has transformed itself from a former mining town to a sustainability hub in their area, with, amongst others, a market garden providing employment for local young people, community renewable energy, a local currency, dozens of other initiatives that connect people to their place, instill a sense of pride and connection and ownership, and have created a truly thriving rural hub. Now, these are just two initiatives that are part of an underreported but a vast and growing wave of community-led projects that are confronting climate emergency in rural areas through schemes that also tackle social disconnection, rural depopulation, food and energy security, unemployment, and so much more. Now, I know I don't need to convince anyone in this room of the science and the scale of climate emergency, of biodiversity loss, of extreme weather, and its very local, real impacts, especially in rural areas. I know that there are farmers in the room, And you will have seen it up close and personal, because rural areas are on the front lines of climate change in Europe. Here we see predictions about the future of agriculture in Mediterranean and the south of Europe. And all of us who are close to the land know that conventional ways of exploiting the land, of leaching the soil, of monocultures are just no longer viable. But the question is now, how do rural areas want to respond to this immense challenge? It's beyond doubt that change is inevitable, transformation is necessary, but we do have a choice about how we respond. Rural areas have great power to be at the core of the transformational shift that must occur and is already underway in places like those that I've mentioned. We've seen that we need a new relationship with the land that regenerates it, that also cares for the people who work it and who live nearby. And this is why community-led initiatives are so important. We need to see a transformational shift in power and focus towards decentralization and local ownership to really see thriving rural areas. Now, what we at Ecolease see as people respond to the climate crisis is this powerful shift to local action and ownership, as in Navarra and in Ungarzheim. Rural areas at the climate frontline have the opportunity to harness both technological and social innovation to revive local communities and economies in a regenerative, circular way that respects people and the planet. But as we hear about examples like those I've just mentioned, we may think, it's tempting to say, very well, very nice, but is it really just a drop in the ocean? Is it enough when we're faced with the enormity of the climate crisis and the ever-shrinking window for action, for a global response? Well, from our vantage point in Ecolease, as we see community-led movements across Europe, we can definitively say no. Far from being a drop in the ocean, they're really part of the turning tide. Ecolease has undertaken the first large-scale study of community-led climate initiatives in Europe, recently published in its first status report. And the evidence shows that there are thousands and thousands of such initiatives across Europe, and taken together, their impact can be immense, not only in terms of climate, in terms of sequestering carbon, in terms of organic agriculture, but also in community resilience, in creating really thriving rural communities that are strong and resilient in the face of these new challenges. And just a few numbers for you. There are an estimated 2,500 community energy initiatives across Europe, 1,500 slow food communities, 500 eco-villages, and about 7,000 community-supported agriculture schemes that are feeding healthy, locally produced food to over 1 million citizens. And this matters. The EU-funded test study found that if only 5% of EU citizens were to engage in effective community-led climate activities, carbon savings would be the equivalent of 85% of the EU's 2020 emissions targets. This is huge. And all of us in this room who are engaging with the climate emergency in our local communities are part of this solution. But for community-led initiatives to reach their full potential for real rural revival and a rural renaissance, responding to the climate crisis, fulfilling their promise of a rural transformation with people and planet at its heart, there is a need for institutional support and for an enabling environment at all levels, with supportive legislation, with appropriate funding support at all levels, from the EU, national, regional, and local. We need more examples like those in Navarra and Ungarzheim, with local and regional institutions listening to community-led initiatives, providing them with the appropriate funding instruments and policy support. With the right support, community-led initiatives can meet the climate crisis in rural areas with resilience, and dare I see it, even with joy, as we reconnect to our communities and to the land. It's clear that we're in a time of rapid change that needs a rapid response from the ground up. We're at a crossroads for rural areas, and we really have a chance to choose how our response is going to be to this crisis and to this opportunity. But through harnessing community-led initiatives, through social innovation and through community engagement, I believe that we can and we will witness a renaissance of thriving and resilient rural areas, which I know all of us in this room want to see. So let's get to work cooperatively together. Thank you. Muchas gracias.